unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host, Ian Gibson. How are you, Ian?
I'm doing really good. It's been a crazy 24 hours and a crazy weekend in college football, man, but it's been fun watching.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving as well. I didn't get a chance to say that. I guess I forgot to text you as well, but
oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
happy Thanksgiving. And I was editing a music video over the last couple of days, so I was pretty busy. I worked I think 8 hours on Thanksgiving, so I really I do apologize, but if it was a normal holiday, I would have been able to send out normal texts to everyone, but I kind of was slacking big time. But let's jump into it because this is a busy week. There were a ton of games. We had on the preview show, we had 24 games. So let's get into it. So first game we had was on Thursday. Big game, a lot on the line for Tulane. If they had won the game, they would have had the potential of winning the AAC championship game as well the following week, which is next week, and they would have had a shot at getting into a playoff spot. A lot of people were saying that they deserved it more than the Big 12 winner, so there was promise there. But in this game, Memphis basically controlled this game, and Tulane really never challenged that much because Memphis was ahead almost the entire game. And, they win 34-24. Tulane didn't look terrible. They had, really bad mistakes that shot themselves in the foot. They had a lot of big plays, and Tulane did, and then they would have turnovers on them. They had big pass plays that would result in it was one guy caught it, and 3 steps later he dropped the ball, and Memphis picked it up. But Memphis did run the ball all over them. They had, a 3-headed attack with Anderson and I don't know the other guys, but they were just running all the way through them. But Ian, are you still there? Hello, Ian. We have some technical difficulties, friends. Ian, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me? All right.
Yeah, I hear you. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Okay, so what are your thoughts on the Tulane-Memphis game?
So Tulane was playing catch-up the whole, and it showed. Memphis' game plan was fantastic, forcing the 3 turnovers on Tulane. You said ball control was not for Tulane. It wasn't at the level that he needed it. And it looked like just Memphis wanted that game more than Tulane. And it's really just because Tulane had all the momentum going. I said if they win the AAC, they would be next in line to maybe spot. But now that's whether they win it or not. They got to go to West Point now this week. But it's a really tough loss. But they were down, 27-10 into the fourth quarter. And they did, they made a good effort trying to come back. But, I mean, there was not enough time. By the time they were playing well, it was too late. But Memphis dominated them on the ground. Time of possession was critical, and Memphis ran all over them on that one. And like you said, just really bring that one.
Okay, let's move on to Friday games. Real quick on Oklahoma State, Colorado. It was a blowout. This game was never close, and Travis Hunter was fed the ball as much as they could near the end zone, and he gets 3 TDs. They end up winning 52-0. I don't have anything else to talk about that. I'm going to move on because there's not much to talk there. Okay, next game we had, which was more of an interesting game, Boise State, Oregon State. This game was not exactly close, but it was a 2-score game throughout most of the third and fourth quarter, and Boise State kept kind of just dropping the ball. Genty lost a fumble as they were about to score a touchdown in the second quarter, I believe. And then they had a turnover and downs, I believe, in the third or fourth quarter. They just were not able to capitalize, which should have made this score a little bit further distance than it was. Genty had a huge game. Genty had, I believe he had 226 yards on 37 carries and a TD. So he had a monster game. So that was great to see. So, yeah, I lost Ian. So I don't know what I'm going to do here, but we're going to keep recording without him. And if he jumps back on, he'll jump back on. But I'm just going to keep going without him. So, Genty, we'll talk about this. I think me and Ian are going to do a show where we break down who we believe should get the Heisman between Genty and Hunter, Travis Hunter. So it'll be not next week because we're going to do conference championship game previews, but then the following week on that Wednesday, we'll do a Heisman preview with, I'm going to take Genty arguing his case, and then Ian will take Travis Hunter's case, and we'll try to just air it out and figure out who actually deserves it. I mean, right now I'm obviously leaning towards Genty. I've been more of a Genty fan all year, but here's Ian again. But no, we'll discuss it when it comes. All right, looks better. Well, now it's not. You hear me?
Yeah, let's see if that did the trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Your thoughts on that Boise State game?
Right. Yeah, no, that was kind of how Colorado was trying to get Travis Hunter his Heisman moment. The same thing was happening with Genty, but again, another 200-yard game. He only had the one touchdown, but that's all they needed. Boise State just controlled this game. And that's what, when you have a guy like Genty, it's much easier, and the offensive line played very well. Defense had good stops, but once they got that 2-possession lead, that's really all you need when you have a running attack like Boise State does.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to the next game we have is Mississippi State Ole Miss. This game was actually surprisingly close until late in the game. And Ole Miss gets a late TD to make it look a lot worse. But Mississippi State was right there with them. Mississippi State had a fake punt that kept the drive alive early, and they got a nice yard after catch touchdown to make it 7-3. The big defensive tackle for Ole Miss makes it 10-7 off his touchdown. Mississippi State then got a deep pass into the red zone, led to a TD run, 14-10 Mississippi State. Another deep pass by Mississippi State into plus territory, but then Ole Miss sacks them, ending that drive. Ole Miss on ensuing drive, huge 89-yard touchdown run by Bentley, making it 17-14. And then Ole Miss got a pick off Mississippi State. Field goal for Ole Miss made it 20-14. And then a nice TD catch at that end by the tight end. That pretty much sealed it. Mississippi State drove late, but got a turnover downs, and that was the end of the game. So, Mississippi State, I will hand it to them. For a 2-10 team, they looked way better than what the 2-10 Florida State team did. And, that speaks volume to the coach at Mississippi State. I know they struggled. They're going to take a lot of work to get this into shape, but there were aspects that, looked viable going forward. The quarterback, Van Buren, obviously is competent enough and athletic enough to make plays. The defense was okay. They kept Jackson Dart on a real low total, 143 passing yards. But overall, Ole Miss was able to run the ball pretty effectively, so they didn't pass it as much. And then, Ole Miss just shot themselves in the foot with that Florida game. And if they had beat Florida, they probably would have won this game as well. And they did. And it's like they'd be 10-2, and they honestly 10-2. I think they would look better than Tennessee because Ole Miss has beaten Georgia while Tennessee didn't. So like really honestly it's really hard to try to put Ole Miss in, but who knows? I mean, Ole Miss wasn't that far off ranking wise coming into the game. They were 14. So I can see them getting up to maybe 12 because there was like at least 3 losses in the top 12. So, they could move in, and I don't know why you wouldn't put them in. But again, that's an argument for when we get to the playoff like preview show, which will be the day of the rankings. We'll do kind of a deep dive that day after the conference game. So that's next Sunday. So we'll do a nice show then. That'll be live. I believe it's early morning Sunday when they do the rankings. Well, at least for me on the West Coast, but it's for East Coast people, it's like probably like 11 or 12, I think, Eastern. So we'll do like
early, I think it was like 11 or noon last year.
Yeah. So we'll do like, we'll come on like probably like an hour and a half hour before. We'll do a deep dive into the teams that we think should go. And then we'll reveal with you guys. So we'll do a live show and we'll be watching, I'll have it on the TV and I'm sure Ian will get a delayed reaction again. And as I like start cheering and then Ian sees it on the TV. Yeah. But no, your thoughts on this game.
So this game was very reminiscent of kind of the Florida State game the year before, where the underdog was really in line with the favorite.
Very true. Very true.
And they had Mississippi State honestly had a chance to pull this out. Like you said, Van Buren did very good, very athletic. But you can kind of tell the inexperience of Mississippi State caught up to them. They have very good athletes and they do have some talent, but Ole Miss is, they've always won these games before. And it's a big rivalry game with the Egg Bowl. And, Lane Kiffin knows he can't lose these ones, especially coming off a loss to Florida. So Mississippi State was hanging with them, but they just didn't have enough of the tank, pure and simple. And Ole Miss did. They did a very good job containing Jackson Dart. But, again, the defense of Ole Miss was able to limit Mississippi State from making any more big plays and made sure there, wasn't any funny business going into the fourth quarter.
Okay, moving on. We're just going to keep moving. It's going to be a fast pace how we do things because there's a lot of information today because of how many games. So just prepare for that. We're not going to like linger on as much as we usually do. Okay. Georgia Tech. This game was wild. I told my wife at like 5 minutes left in the game, I think Georgia's going to lose. And I knew I shouldn't have opened my damn mouth because as soon as I opened my mouth, Georgia just, and it's like, oh, God, it was frustrating. So Georgia Tech was up 17-0 at half and was seemingly on the way to winning this game. They were dominating on offense. They were forcing Georgia into mistakes. Georgia looked like dog crap all game, and they were up. Haynes King gets a touchdown to put them up 27-13, like I said, with 5 minutes left. And then Georgia gets a touchdown, and it's like, okay, whatever. There's not that much time left. If Georgia Tech runs out the ball, this game is over. Haynes King is running up the middle, and he is about to get the first down. And then the Georgia safety hits him right in the chest and like in the head and neck area as well with the crown of his helmet. And it clearly was targeting, but there was no call. There was like no even mention of it on the broadcast at all. It was clearly targeting. It should have been called. I mean, if it's going to be targeting for against Florida when the guy hits the guy's butt, like then it's got to be targeting here as well. And especially with this game on the line, and they dropped the ball and it was not targeting. And he fumbles the ball. Georgia picks it up. Georgia scores. And obviously the overtime was crazy. It was 8 overtimes and it was back and forth, and they were corresponding scores and whatever. Like to actually dictate and tell you what happened there is kind of a waste of time. But once it got to the last one, Georgia Tech failed to convert. Georgia had the opportunity and they converted on a run because, Georgia Tech kept just like, the pass rush was coming upfield. So they weren't even like keeping their gap control. And so Georgia was able to easily gash that. And, it was the right move because Georgia had been passing most of those overtime plays, the 2-point plays. They were throwing the ball. So it was right to play that as a pass. And, Georgia converts and that's it. And, it's a shame that Georgia Tech lost this game because they deserved to win. Because if they had won this game, they would have beaten Florida State to begin the year in Ireland, Miami, and Georgia. That would have been a monster year for Brent Key. It still is a really great year, and I expect very good things going forward for them. They should have won this game. They were the better team for 95% of this game. And, it's a shame that Georgia won this game because they didn't deserve it. But Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I know that I remember thinking that, especially when they beat Florida State, and if they did this, that Gator fans would have been sending them roses if they pulled it out. But it didn't happen. And the more frustrating thing for this game is, Georgia Tech had them. They had them at multiple points in the game. Georgia Tech could have put that game away. But the most frustrating part, it wasn't even the missed call. It was when you got to the 2-point conversions. This is the reality you got. Haynes King is basically a fullback at quarterback who could just run through anybody, and your run game has been killing them.
Yeah.
But Georgia's secondary, we still know how good Georgia's secondary is. It's a 2-point conversion, basically your game, and they threw it 4 freaking times in a row.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, just run, especially where the 2-point conversion could have won it. I'm like, look, if I'm the coach, I'm telling Kane, I'm like, dude, 2 things are going to happen. Either you pitch it to the running back or you run through that dude's face, which we all know he can. Like, I didn't get the play calling on that one, but Georgia survives. They got all I could say is, regardless of calls or not, they are very, very lucky. And I've always said this: when you play a game like that, you play like that in the SEC championship with playing Texas again after they've already seen you. It's not going to be the same, song and dance as it was in Austin if you play like that against Tech. Because I know Texas is not going to give up, going to blow a 27-13 lead in the fourth quarter.
Oh, no. And I really think that Texas might have learned some things from that game. And I think they might be able to beat them. But no, the last thing I wanted to mention was that defensive pass interference on that 4th down late in the game that gave Georgia a score. That honestly was the crucial call as well, because it clearly wasn't anything. It was like the guy defending, and he had the right to defend. And they called it, gave them a 1st down at the 1, and they scored right after. So, that changed the game completely, because if they turned the ball over there, it would have been 20-6 or 20-6. I think Georgia Tech would have easily won the game, because they probably would have, after that point, they ended up driving and then scoring a touchdown. So they may have drive down the field and made it 27-6, which that game would have been completely over at that point, which honestly, the Tech was the better team in this game, and they should have won. And it's a shame that Georgia won this game. They really didn't deserve it. Okay, moving on. Michigan, Ohio State. I think everyone in the world had Ohio State winning this game. I think a lot of people had Ohio State winning big. I even was remarking how Desmond Howard had Ohio State or Michigan winning on his pick on Saturday. And I was like, God, what a homer, even into this game. But, I knew all year that Michigan had a really good defense. And I knew that was going to be the saving grace for them, because I was like, they've kept games in check for the most part. They were right there with Oregon for a large portion of that game. They were right there with Indiana. They were not a bad team in some of these games. There were others that they looked a little worse, but like the big games, they actually played really tough. I mean, they ended up with 5 losses, which is funny because I saw some guy was like, I'm going to have to find the bookmark on Twitter about this guy saying that he was like, there's no way Michigan goes 7-5 and They went 7-5, which is funny. But no, in Ohio State, this is also the reality of the playoff, the expanded playoff, is that with a 10-2 Ohio State, yes, they're not going to the Big Ten championship game, which is not great, but now they have a shot at. They're definitely going to the playoff. They're going to get in no matter what, and so more than likely they're going to be on the road, which may not be that bad of a thing. Honestly, I feel like this Ohio State maybe needs like going on the road to like change things up. And if they really are going to get on a run, they need to like win that first one. And then like they'll have 3 more games to really like figure it out. But like the first one, I think going on the road might be best for them because it might even be like a, I don't know, like a Miami or like a, maybe an SEC team. So maybe the weather isn't as bad, and so maybe that might favor them. I know because yes, it might be good to have the home field advantage with a snow game, but I think right now they just need to get on the road, get away from this home loss, figure things out, and they'll have 2 weeks in between too, so they'll be able to or more actually because it's it's the
December
conference
20th,
game
I
next
think,
week,
is the start of the
Heisman, and then the week after is the playoff game. So they'll have 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
Or no. It's 3 weeks off because they'll have the conference and the Heisman. So that's 3 weeks off. So that's a good amount of time to like recover, get everyone healthy, get ready for this game. And I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, Michigan was. I don't know. Their offense is not great at all. And so, like, they really didn't do much. The passing was nothing. 62 passing yards for Davis Warren. But Will Howard, though, made a ton of mistakes. Like, so many bad interceptions in this game. And it was just like, man, he really, like, kept Michigan in this game. And also the field goals missed by the Ohio State kicker. That was huge. Like, if he doesn't miss those kicks, it's like, Ohio State probably was going to be up like 16-13 near the end or 16-10 near the end of that game. And then that forces Michigan to score a touchdown. And, maybe this game is different. I don't know. It's a shame because Ohio State should be the better team in this game. But this is what happens. Rivalry games, anything can happen. Like we'll talk about, there's more that came on this week of just different games that were just surprises, and this was a complete surprise. I don't think anybody saw coming, but your thoughts, Ian?
So remember the narrative that about Harbaugh not beating Ohio State?
Yeah.
Tables turn, don't they? That is absolutely Ryan Day now. And Look, we knew in the preseason, whether you like it or not, depending, the one saving grace for Day is that more than likely they might fall up into the playoff and they might have a playoff game to recover. But if they don't, or if they lose badly in that playoff game, dude, that's going to be some tough negotiating because there was no excuse for losing to this Michigan team. Michigan team.
Right.
You could say, I've said it in years before, the team times Michigan has beaten Ohio. I would say technically had the better players, but maybe Michigan was the better team. There was no excuse in this one. Ohio State should have blown them out. And when you think about it, we all knew about Michigan's defense and how tough they are. But the fact that you can't score more than 13 points is a little surprising.
Right.
And it's really damning testament to Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and that offense. Because you had athletes all across the board that you did nothing with that could have given you a better chance to win the game. It was really like upsetting to see because I was like you said, we know Ohio State's like good, so why are they not being good against their biggest rival? Because that is, when you think about it, you want a playoff atmosphere, 1 versus 2 or top 10 matchups in rivalry games. And let's be real, Ohio State's played in 2 of them. They played against Oregon in a top 10 matchup, lost, and they played their biggest rival in Michigan and lost. Not the best testament when you're about to go in a playoff game on the road now. So Ryan Day is going to have to do a lot of soul searching here with this team to try, if they do get in the playoff, try to make a run. because if not, it's not looking good in the offseason, because out of all of the Michigan wins beating Ohio State, this is the most inexcusable, because there was no way that Michigan team should have beaten Ohio State, and they found a way. Ohio State found a way to lose that game rather than Michigan.
Yeah, and Ryan Day has basically become the modern day John Cooper. If you know anything about that guy, Ian, he was the coach in like the '90s for Ohio State before Jim Tressel, and like he just couldn't beat Michigan. I think he beat Michigan like one time in like 9 or 10 years.
I think it was one or twice.
Yeah, it was
but
very
they kicked him to the curb. They had like 10-win seasons, but if you don't
he was
that's how it is with these schools.
Yeah, and they had a shot at winning the national title in the year that Florida won the first one, and they didn't get it. I can't remember why they didn't get it, but they were like
Arizona State
something about it. I know, like I've seen Ohio State fans complain about it before about why they didn't get it, but either way, he's on this trajectory of just bad performances. I mean, he's gotten to the championship game, and he was on the verge of beating Georgia 2 years ago in the playoffs, and he probably should have won it if he had a better kicker. Again, his kicker has screwed him again twice in these big games. It's like, maybe, dude, you should probably get a good kicker, because that seems to be important for your team, especially in these close games. Okay, moving on to Tennessee Vandy. Oh man, I was heartbroken because I had this as one of my upsets, and Vandy went up 14-0, and they were up 17-7. And I'm like, oh, let's go. And then I like actually watched the game, and I was like, oh, this ain't even close, because like Vandy got a kickoff return for a touchdown, and then got a turnover in their on Tennessee's side of the 50, and then converted that for a touchdown really easily. And it was like they weren't doing much on offense. They were just getting lucky field position and, special teams plays. And so then when the game was actually going on, they weren't doing anything at all. And like Tennessee's defense was looking really good. And considering that all year Pavia has pretty much moved the ball on every defense he's played, this looks really good for Tennessee going forward. And Nico looked really good. He had 4 TDs, and like most of his passes looked really nice. And, he connected on deep balls, and it was, he had one bad interception, but besides that, he looked really good. And Dylan Sampson had a fumble loss. That was that turnover early. But he had a huge game, 178 yards. I mean, this Tennessee team, like, stranger things have happened, but they will definitely get tested whoever they play in that first round. It's likely that they'll get a home playoff game because they're 8th seeded right now. So they'll probably be like 7 or 6 after Miami lost and some other teams. So, they should be one of the top end teams getting a home playoff game. And that honestly should be a lot of fun. That should be a crazy environment. They should probably win that game. I think regardless of opponent, I think Tennessee should be favored in that game. So Tennessee, they didn't beat Georgia, but it didn't end up their season. It didn't derail them. And that's the beauty of the expanded playoff. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and give credit where credit's due with at least Vandy making Tennessee work for it, which has bin more than it can be said in the past meetings. But Tennessee did kind of flex their muscles, especially towards the second and third quarter. They just showed Vandy's had a good run, but Tennessee did a good job responding, because we've seen Vandy, you can't take them lightly now. And when they jump on you, you better respond. You better respond fast. And I'll give credit. Tennessee did that better than Alabama did, or even honestly, like
Missouri
in some cases, even though
Texas
Texas won
or
that
anybody.
Game. Missouri, yeah. But Tennessee, like I said, they did a good job responding to the adversity. Nico did a good job. I know he had the 4 touchdowns, and Sampson had a fantastic game running the ball. And the defense definitely came up clutch. They settled at first quarter, and they didn't have any points in fourth quarter. But all in all, a good balanced attack from Tennessee, and they're definitely the offense just showed how good they can be when they are clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to next game we have is South Carolina Clemson. Dude, I'm telling you what, man. South Carolina wins this one 17-14. Janoris Sellers, I mean, this kid, if most of you people don't know who he is, or Lenore Sellers, sorry. Didn't mean to mistake his name, but Sellers just phenomenal. Like the kid is so elusive. He had a huge run to begin the game, and then he had a great touchdown run at the end of the game. Just the kid is 166 total yards, 2 TDs. He just is the engine that makes his team run. Their defense is strong. You know, kept the Clemson running attack to limited numbers. Klubnik still had a decent game, but you know, they were able to hold Clemson to only 139 yards on the ground compared to South Carolina's 267. You know, South Carolina, I'm telling you what, if there's ever a team that is really dangerous and that is really hot right now, because they're 9-3, they were 15th ranking coming into this game. They beat Clemson, so they should at least replace them. So like it's now you're really going to be drawing straws because you got Ole Miss, you got South Carolina, you got Alabama. Like those three, I think at least one of those is getting in. I think Tennessee is going to get in. Georgia's obviously getting in, regardless if they win or lose. Texas, win or lose, they're getting in. So there's like 3, there's maybe 4, probably 5 SEC teams. You know, there's a lot to digest there. And then you also have now Ohio State is one of those at-large teams. So you have Ohio State at large, you know, Miami with 2 losses. What do you do there? You know, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it just that we'll get more into the playoff stuff. But just in this game, just remarkable. They were able to hold Clemson in check at the end there, where Clemson had the ball driving down the field, and it looked like they just needed a field goal. But for some reason, they were throwing with like 15 seconds left, and they get intercepted, and that's the game. So South Carolina wins this huge rivalry game, monster win, because now they beat Clemson, they beat A&M, you know, they beat Missouri. You know, South Carolina looks really good. They have a lot of really good wins on their resume. So, Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, the one driving point of this game is that both teams committed turnovers, but if South Carolina actually had 3 turnovers, but since 2 turnovers, the difference is that South Carolina was able to capitalize in the field position, and just straight up Clemson, for whatever reason, they have really struggled against mobile quarterbacks. And Lenore Sellers, we saw like what he did at LSU. It was like a repeat. When it came down to crunch time, I knew like he was going to be calm in the pocket and make plays when it needed to be. And again, man, Clemson, they another kind of the same thing with Ohio State and Michigan, not in the aspect because I honestly think Clemson and South Carolina are near even right now.
More even, yeah.
But Clemson had a lot of Clemson had a lot of chances to put this game away too, and they just kept them in the South Carolina wouldn't go away, and that's the thing, especially with rivalry games. You better put your opponent away quick because if you keep them around until late in the game, exactly what happened with South Carolina and Clemson did, and it's really tough. Because what is that now? Back-to-back times, South Carolina has gone to Clemson and beaten them when they were favored. It's not the prettiest look to end the year for Clemson. Any chance Clemson has that maybe, unless they win the ACC championship, it's not looking too good for them to get backdoored into the playoffs now, considering the records of the other teams in front of them.
Yeah, they need to win the ACC to get in. I don't think they're getting in with 3 losses. Because they also got blown out by Georgia, which doesn't look good, regardless if it's the first game.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to UTSA Army. You have thoughts on this? Because I didn't get a chance to actually watch all the highlights.
Man, Army got lucky. Now, here's the thing. Army still played an Army game, and that defense was able to force the turnovers when it came in clutch. But UTSA, this is the UTSA team I was, kind of expecting.
Yeah.
Even though we knew Army was going to win the time of possession battle, it didn't really matter for UTSA. But regardless of that, Army gets the win, and they were able to do literally just enough to get there. Daly had another fantastic game, both on the ground.
Yeah.
He did had some pretty good passes. He went, I think, 10 for 17, almost 200 yards.
Yeah, 190.
But for UTSA, they kept them honest, and Army, wasn't making it easy on themselves. Because this is the problem when you play a team like UTSA with that quick pace offense. It doesn't matter if you win the time possession battle because they can score real quick.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to one of the teams we cover, which is USF and Rice. Man, this was pathetic. I mean, I'm really sad to see this, go the way it did. I was expecting a better effort. Maybe with this result, because I didn't see what happened to Bryce Archie, but he went down and was replaced by Israel Carter. And Izzy had a really good fourth quarter and looked a lot better. And, they just were down too much. They were down, 33-7 or something like that? Or no, 33-14 or 35-14. They were down way too much to be able to expect to try to win this game. And they came back late and they scored 2 touchdowns to make it closer. They got a scoop and score. And they had the ball with the last play, and they could have tied it, and they got all the way down to the 20. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's just it's tough because it's like they had a chance to go 7-5, and then maybe win the bowl game and go 8-5, which would be progress on to last year. Essentially, it doesn't really matter because they already got bowl eligibility, so they're already going to a bowl game. They have a chance to win the bowl game and get a winning record for the year, which would be 2 years in a row, which would be good. Obviously the 3 years with Jeff Scott were terrible. They only won 4 games. So, it's whatever. Like, I know this was rough. Like, Rice was throwing the ball all over him. They had no way of stopping him. They were like, and which is such a shame because the start of the year with the 2 games, the 1 game against Miami and then the early first half the first half against Miami and the game against Alabama, the defense played really well. And it's like, in certain games they've played well, but then in this game they regressed and they just looked terrible. This Rice team is not good. And to let them throw all over them is a shame. I mean, the guy had what do you have? He had 430 yards, which is ridiculous.
I think he had 400. Yeah.
Yeah. This should not happen. And, it's just got to change. If they can get the defense better next year, and I think they will, they're definitely, the recruiting is, some of the best in the group of 5. I think it's the first ranked class in the group of 5 right now. And it was last year. And, Golish keeps it rolling. People see there is some success there. Obviously, the offense is flashy and explosive, so people want to play for them. And if the defense can get better, it'll be better. I think next year can be the schedule is still going to be very similar to this year. So they just got to take advantage of the stuff. They got to go at least 9-3, 10-2 next year. They really can't. They cannot be, this 7-5, 7-6 stuff again. They got to get better. But your thoughts, Ian?
This is the first time I'm going to say this one is on Golish because of the simple fact that they were sleepwalking in that first half. And it literally looked like they got their bowl bid, and that's all they cared about. They didn't even want to play this game. That's seriously what it looked like in the half. And woke up and realized, and now, Archie went down. And then after that, Carter kid's a playmaker. He can, do stuff with his legs and all that. He actually went 5 for 6, I think. So he didn't do that terrible passing. They simplified it for him. But the fact, regardless if Archie goes down or not, that first half was very damning because that Rice team should not have beaten them. USF was way better than them. And I know Rice has given, trouble to other teams, but they should have won that game. And it really boiled down to USF didn't care. It looked like they didn't care if they wanted to win or not. And that sucks because they were in position to have a better statistical by wins regular season than last year because they won 6 games in the regular season and they won 7 this year. And what have even been better is that they had a way tougher schedule this year and they got more wins in the regular season, but instead 6-6. Now, I'm not going to be as upset because yes, they are going back to a bowl game. It's still progress to go back-to-back bowl games. It's at least something to build on. But now is the time where I need to see USF move forward. I'm going to give a mulligan for this one because it was a tough schedule. Byron Brown is injured. And honestly, the whole cloak and dagger of whether, he's day-to-day. He's been day-to-day for 3 months now.
Yeah.
It feels like. Just next season and this offseason, we're going to need to see some progress. If you really want to be at Tulane, Memphis, that level of the AAC, you're going to have to start winning games and not dropping it to a 3-win Rice team at the end of the year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, moving on to Penn State, Maryland. We're just going to cover this one real quick. 44-7. Not really much to talk about. Your thoughts before we move on?
I mean, Penn State, took care of business and, they gladly, will walk into the Big Ten championship now with Ohio State losing. So they did their job.
Yeah, and they'll play Oregon, and we'll talk about that later. I feel like Oregon would probably stomp them. I just don't think this Penn State team is very good because the only game they played, Ohio State, they lost. So let's move on. Alabama, Auburn. I actually didn't get a chance to watch any of these highlights, so Ian, I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, what was interesting is that Auburn probably played one of their better games, probably with the exception of the A&M game, and they came in definitely smelling an upset. Bama, they 4 turnovers. Man, that's brutal. And that, again, that's not the best look you want to have when you're trying to make a case to go into the playoff. But Milroe, 20th touchdown rushing this series, so he's the 4th quarterback to do that in SEC history.
Yeah. Cam, Johnny, and Timmy Tebow, I think.
Tebow.
Yeah.
But Peyton Thorne, I want to give credit. He had a great game, over 300 yards, and they kept Auburn in it. I will say, but in the end, it boiled down to who had really the better team. And once Alabama went out to that 28-6 lead in the third, and Auburn responded, but Alabama wasn't giving them any chances in the fourth quarter. I don't know how many times Auburn really crossed the 50 in the fourth quarter, so Alabama just kind of put them to sleep.
Okay, moving on. I did get one of my upsets, and I picked this one right. I had Syracuse winning, and they did. They won 42-38. This game was high scoring. It was back and forth. Miami was up 21-0 at one point, and I was like, oh, man. So I had like the reverse where the Vandy game, they were up early, and then they lost. This one, the team that I was hoping was going to lose was up early, and I was like, oh, no, I was going to get double loss in both my upsets. But then Syracuse just kept coming back. McCord looked really great. He made a ton of plays. They got some a mistake by Restrepo, who fumbled the ball, and a scoop and score for Syracuse, and they return it for a touchdown. They go up 35-28. Restrepo comes back, answers with a long yard after catch touchdown, tied it up 35-35. McCord leads them down for Syracuse, gets the score 42-35. And then Mario peeks his head in and gives them thinking, oh, we'll just go for a field goal here, even though we're close, make it 42-38 for some reason. And their defense is not good. I don't know why you would think that your defense is going to get a stop when they haven't gotten anything all game, really, for the most part. And, Syracuse runs the ball a couple of times, gets first downs, and runs out the clock, and the game's over. And, I knew this. I knew this coming to this game. Miami's defense was terrible all year. And now they go from potentially playing for an ACC championship, and even if they had lost it, if they had gone 11-1 and gotten the ACC championship game in Charlotte and they lost, they still might have gotten in. But now, because they lost this game, they don't have the extra opportunity. they will now be 10-2. Most likely, they're probably going to be outside the 12 seed ranking, and so they may not even get into the playoff. They went from like an 84% chance of getting into the playoff with a win yesterday to now 40%, maybe even less. So there's a chance that they don't get in, and I think they don't. I don't think they deserve it. They haven't played a tough schedule at all, and most of the games that they've played, they have been in dogfights where they barely won and needed help with Vatek, needed help with Cal. They barely won those games, and then they lost to Georgia Tech. They lose to Syracuse here. I just don't think they deserve it. I really don't think they deserve to be in the playoff. They don't have a single ranked win against opponents that were ranked when they played them. And they just, yes, the offense is great. And I've said that all year. Their offense is phenomenal. It's the best in the country. Ward is really good. Restrepo, obviously, George, Martinez, Arroyo, the tight end, and the offensive line is good. But that's not what makes a team. If you don't have a defense, you're not going to win games, and that's what they did. They could not win games because their defense was so bad. Ian, your thoughts?
I totally agree with you. You play with fire for so long, you're going to get burned. And Miami got burned against Tech playing close to a team they should have beaten, and they were doing the same thing with Syracuse. And you're up 21-0. How do you, with a chance to? It was the easiest path for them. Win and you're in. No questions asked. And somehow, some way, Miami has always found a way since they joined the ACC to look a gift horse in the mouth and wave goodbye to it. It is insane. They've been. Here's also another interesting thing. Miami has 5 national. They have never won a conference championship game, meaning they were championship. And they lost that one in 2016. It was 2015 or 2016. But
2017.
It's really inexplicable. 2017, thank you. But you kind of have that feeling like if they play a team close for so long, you can't keep expecting to get bailed out over and over again. You can't expect Cam Ward to, get another like 20 points out of nowhere in 5 minutes. And they got burned. And again, that decision to kick the field goal, I've always been of the mindset, go for the hard. It is much easier or to, at least like it makes more sense. It is harder to get a touchdown than a field goal. So when you have that opportunity, go for the touchdown. I would be rather you miss a chance to score a touchdown than an easy field goal because I know how tough it is to go 100 yards instead of maybe 60 or 70 and kick a game-tying field goal or a game-winning field goal. So that was another blunder on the coaching there. But, I mean, it's just I'm out of words for Miami because I agree. I don't know if they deserve it because they don't have a ranked win. And they did not have a tough schedule, but they sure made it look tough. And they're not going to the ACC championship. And it's not the best, look for them.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't play Clemson. They didn't play SMU. And that decision, like you're right, because it's like if they even if they hit the field goal, which they did, they still have to score a touchdown to win because they're down 4. Because like a field goal doesn't help if they got the ball back. So it's like, depending on you'd have to go even for like it's just like, man, you're close. I know it's 4th down, but you're better off trying for it close than trying to kick a field goal. That's like it's basically surrender Cobra right there. Okay, we'll jump into some of these real quick. Cal, SMU wins 38-6, really easy. Any thoughts?
Not much. It's just SMU did commit 17 penalties. They got to clean that up because that's not going to fly going forward. They have been a very penalized team. They were kind of getting their act together. But when you Cal, it's not as big of a deal, but if you're playing in championship games, you need to be as mistake-free as possible.
Yeah, but I think they still might get in even if they lose to Clemson because I think
I would probably say I would if I was the decision maker.
I think so. They've been like moving them up the ranks lately, and I think even a loss may not be the end of it. Okay. Notre Dame, USC. This game was a lot closer than it looked because at one point Notre Dame was up 49-28, but it was 35-28 at one point, and USC was driving with a chance to try to tie it. Maivia gets picked. They run it back for a touchdown. It was in their end zone, so it was like almost like a 100-yard return. They drive down the field again. Maivia again picked off in the end zone, again like a 100-yard return. So it was 2 pick sixes, and the game's basically over. They get a late touchdown. But, yeah, it's, USC just, I don't know, man. They just weren't good enough. But I'm going to talk more about Notre Dame here because obviously USC still has a bowl game. Things are not the worst in the world. They made the quarterback change. Things look to be moving in the right direction with that. Going forward, I don't know how much eligibility Maivia has left. I think maybe he has one more year, so that might bode well for them. But Notre Dame, 11-1, had a lot to play for here because the playoffs were on the line. They have a real shot. They will be the top seed. And so at this point, they don't have any more games, so they'll likely be the top seed playing a home playoff game in South Bend. So hats off to them. They'll likely play the weakest seed, the 12th seed, and, everything to play for. This is what they wanted. Marcus Freeman has this team playing well. I know they lost to Northern Illinois, but that's seems like eons ago. They've played really well. They beat Army pretty significantly. They beat USC here on the road. I feel like they deserve it. They didn't have the greatest schedule, but you got to play who you have in front of you. And I think right now an 11-1 Notre Dame team deserves to be in the playoff. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, this is the benefit of being Catholics versus conferences because you don't got to worry about a conference championship. But yeah, again, with the one loss, but it is such a bad loss. But I don't see them putting them out of the playoff because, they beat USC. They beat their rivals. They got the job done in that aspect. We'll have to see with conference championship week where everything aligns, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did give them a home playoff game. Now, who they play and how they will match up on that will be very interesting. But all in all, I mean, Notre Dame got the job done, and those 2 pick sixes were definitely the nail in the coffin for USC. And they did play well. They just didn't play well enough to beat a Notre Dame team, knowing their playoffs were on the line in that game.
Yeah. And, stat-wise, USC had a ton of yards, 557 yards, and it was really Notre Dame taking advantage of mistakes, and those 2 pick sixes were the real difference in the game there. Okay, moving on. Another blowout, Arizona State, Arizona. Arizona State with a berth to the Big 12 championship game on the line. If they lost, it would have gotten murky. They win, they get in, and some other things help them out as well. So they win 49-7. This game was never really close. Sam Levitt had a huge game, 291 yards, 3 TDs. Scadaboo, another huge game. I know no one knows his first name. His first name is Cameron. So Cameron Scadaboo, but everyone just says Scadaboo, which is funny. But Arizona just...
It's funner to say.
What?
It's more fun to say.
Yeah, exactly. But Arizona, tough year for them after losing their coach, Jed Fish. So kind of starting over. They still have some talent there with McMillan and the quarterback, Fafita. But tough day for them. Arizona State just looks really good. Their defense does enough to throttle teams. They beat BYU. That was a huge win. And now they're going to play for the Big 12 championship. And they're playing Iowa State, and everything's on the line. 643 yards of total offense for Arizona State compared to 210. That is a throttling. That's just a massacre. And hand it to Arizona State. They took care of business. Your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, you didn't even need to see the score to know who won. You just need to know 646 yards to 200 and something yards. That's all you need to know about who won that game. That was an emphatic stamp of going to the Big 12 championship and taking that opportunity. Good win for Arizona State, and now they got everything to play for going to Texas.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on.
For the Big 12 championship. I need to clarify on that.
Yes. Yeah. Fresno State, UCLA. Not going to talk much about this one. UCLA kind of struggled in this one, which is surprising considering they have more talent than Fresno State, but they get the win. Garber's a good last game, 289 yards, did enough to win that late TD pass, and UCLA gets the win. They end up 5-7, so not the worst season ever, but it's still rough. I think next year going forward with Eric Bieniemy, if he stays on, I think he got a real feel for how to call offense as the year went on. And I think he'll be better next year, and that'll raise the level of the offense. So UCLA gets the win. Any thoughts? And then I'll just move on really quickly.
Yeah, nothing much, but I mean, it was a good win for UCLA. At least they ended it on a high note. I know this was a very tumultuous, not tumultuous, just a very rough season for them. But given the aspect, they did look better as the season went on. They just played flat out teams that were better than them. So there is at least something to look forward to. And hopefully they can improve. But, they got the win. They're more than likely going to miss a bowl game. I don't know if
they're 5-7.
I don't. There's too many. Yeah, there's too many 6-win teams. They want to get into one. But
good win. 7 teams have a shot. Yeah, I forgot.
They have a shot, but I didn't look at the spreadsheet to see if anybody could fall up into it. But I don't think it's likely. And even then, I think there were some other 5-win teams that would get in. But regardless, UCLA, again, tough season, but they ended it on a high note.
Okay. I'm going to let you go on this one because I want to hear your thoughts first. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll talk about the post-game stuff in a sec. But, man, that was – so first things first, Florida's defense took care of business. They came out, they showed out, and they got the job done. Offensively, it was a very rough start in the beginning. There were so many drop passes in the beginning. This score could have been way worse. There were, at the very beginning of the game, there were at least 3 first downs that were dropped for Florida and a couple more. So the receiving game was really not on their A game. And even then, DJ wasn't as accurate as we were used to seeing. He was throwing balls a little too high to the receivers, and he had guys open that they just couldn't connect. But luckily, the run game, which has been getting better and better every week, is able to complement the passing game with DJ. And really, that was the story, was how well the run game and the offensive line was able to push that line and get substantial yardage. They were able to average, I think, 6 yards a carry. So with that, it's a very tough recipe to come back from when you're Florida State. Defensively, again, good job to avoid any surprises here. But I mean, Florida State did a lot of good job helping Florida's defense out. 8 total fumbles, and 5 of them were recovered by Florida. That is an absolutely atrocious turnover differential. And they were ranked, Florida State had the worst turnover differential in the country. And they certainly showed it in this one. The 5 turnovers. The one where it became a joke was they were literally on the doorstep, ready to score a touchdown, and they pitch it and they clunk it. And I went, oh my God, you were kidding me. And Florida could have recovered another touchdown if the guy just fell on the ball. So it was really as easy as it could possibly get for them. Yeah. I remember I was saying last year, Florida State was absolutely begging Florida to beat them. And man, they were really pleading this one. And good on Billy Napier. This is his first rivalry game win on the road. He never beaten before last night. He never beat Florida State. Georgia doesn't count because it's neutral site. If you wanted to count, sure. Tennessee and I guess LSU. That was his first road rivalry game win, and it definitely was an emphatic one. Florida just showed they were, they were just better, more disciplined, and all that stuff. The only thing I want to say, I know I try to keep my emotions in check and all that, but the whole like flag plant gate going on and all that, look, maybe it doesn't have a place and all that, but you can't be surprised when these teams fight, because like Ohio State, Michigan, Florida, Florida State, and NC State, North Carolina, they're going to fight each other regardless. So it adds to the rivalry. But the only other thing about that, should we have done it? Maybe not. But I don't want to hear anything from Florida State of how classless we were for that, because they're the same team that rips up field and has a cemetery, same team around with a gator head every time they beat us and all that stuff. So I get it. I don't have a problem with them doing that. So don't have a problem with us doing that. And the only other thing I want to say, famous words of Brad Nessler, you showed that much fight at the end of the game. Where was it during the game?
Yeah, exactly. Let me jump into my thoughts, because I want 15 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 8 fumbles. And, it was a butt whooping of epic proportion. And it was only 20 points, but, you said, yes, DJ didn't look completely accurate, but there were like 5 or 6 balls that a lot of them were on the receivers, because there were ones that were right in their hands that they just completely dropped. Yeah. And it's like, man, if tight ends are catching balls and DK missed a few, and it was like, if there were some different, results there on those catches, maybe they're moving down the field, maybe they're running the ball pretty well. I will say this is something that stood out to me was, I don't know if you listened to the game on did you watch on TV?
I watched it on TV, yeah. I couldn't hear the commentators because where I was at, but I was able to watch what was going on.
You got so lucky, because those commentators were terrible. They were, I'm almost positive they're like usual ACC guys that cover ACC games and lower end ACC games, because they were just kissing FSU's butt the entire time, and they couldn't stop giving them praise. And I'm like, this is a 2-9 team that is fumbling the ball all over the place. And, Florida is basically dominating this game, in the backfield. They're not stopping their DNs or their tackles at all. And yet they were acting like they they had a shot in this game. And they were blowing smoke up Cronin Crook's butt the whole time. And I'm like, this guy is not doing anything. He fumbled the ball several times. It were clearly on him. If he just holds on to the ball and takes the sack, it's not that big a deal. But he fumbled it several times. You have to give fault somewhere to these guys. They're obviously doing something bad. And, Florida wins by 20. And, if they had a better first half, they would have been up 28-0 in that half. And they would have won the game 45-48 to 3 or 10 or whatever. And I think people would have felt a lot better. I still feel pretty good. Winning 31-11, it's a 20-point victory, in a rival's home, and, the stuff with the flag, whatever. It's funny. I'm obviously making comments on Twitter, and it's funny and laughing because, Mike Norvell looked like a clown and like usual. And it was really soft the way he reacted. Who cares, man? You really that butthurt? Billy just kind of was whatever. It was was surprised that he was so mad about it. And I know Billy ended up apologizing and say there's no place for that, but whatever, man. It's a rivalry game. If you don't want that stuff, don't lose the game. And so like you said, Florida State does the same stuff when they cut up the sod for their sod games, and when they prance around with the gator head. That's just what happens in rivalry games. It's not that big a deal. I don't know why they got so angry about it. They just, you got demolished on the field. Billy's stealing all the recruits. And now, going forward, the momentum is all on Florida's side. And, who would have thought a year ago Florida State was 13-0, and now it is completely flipped. And Florida didn't even have that great of a year. They only went 7-6 or 7-5. And now it's the momentum is completely on Billy's side, and Norvell just looks listless and useless. And, 2-10, no bowl game, nothing to show for. They went from first in the ACC last year to now 17th place, the first ever time the ACC has had a 17th place, and they got it. And you know what? I don't know. I mean, I am an alum of Florida State. Surprise, yes, but I've always cheered for Florida football. So, and an alum because I only did 1 year there and I didn't graduate from there. So, but no, Florida State, look, your team is not good enough. Your recruiting has been terrible, and it showed on the field because you tried to rely on a bunch of transfers and they came in and they didn't do much. And I'll get into this real quick about about Florida, because enough about making fun of Florida State. But Florida, tremendous job on the ground. The run game looks amazing. Defense, D-line was just ferocious. Everyone had a sack basically on the defense. There was multiple guys with 2 sacks. Cam Jackson, Jaden Robinson, who's had a tremendous year, who I didn't expect much out of, but has had a great year. Montrell, almost 100 yards on the ground. Jaden Ball with 81 yards, huge runs all game. Jacoby Jackson with a really good game and a touchdown. DJ didn't look great, but honestly, he played well enough to win. That one interception in the end zone, it was a miscommunication with Burke and DK. Burke was supposed to come down, and then I think on a hitch, not a hitch, but like more of a longer in, and then DK was running that that corner route, and so it would have been open because that defender would have followed Burke, and DK would have been there easily for the touchdown. So whatever. Again, that's another part of why it wasn't a bigger score than it was. It's no big deal. They won the game. They have a chance to go 8-5 to get into the bowl game. And we'll see. The recruiting is through the roof right now. I just saw something before we got on. They might be able to flip a Tennessee 4-star DB. So, there's another feather in the cap if they can get him. I mean, they got that Penn State guy yesterday. They're getting guys all over the place. Nobody is safe. They're really, picking guys from everywhere. And I think people are seeing the momentum. People want to play for DJ. DJ is a stud. I mean, he has that it factor. I know we've talked about it. The kid is just phenomenal. He made that play in the game where that guy had him dead to rights. He was all over the defensive tackle. DJ breaks away from him somehow. I'm surprised they didn't blow it dead because he was not moving forward. And then DJ breaks free and makes the throw and makes it to DK. And it was just phenomenal. And he just makes plays like that every game, literally every game. He just does something like that. So just great game. But you have one more thought?
One thing I want to say,
yeah.
I know, last thing I'll say for Florida State season, this is definitely the playoff committee's fault for going 2-10.
Yeah. Nice.
That's
Love
all. I'm all right. I'm done. That's all.
That's sticking. All right, moving on. Purdue, Indiana, real quick. 66-0, really big answer after the loss to Ohio State. So on track, more than likely getting into the playoffs, especially with Miami's loss. So Indiana did what they needed to do, 66-0. Any thoughts before we move on?
I mean, talk about a comeback performance there. I mean, against a rival like Purdue, but Purdue's definitely been down this year, finishing 1-11. Dropping 66 on them definitely feels good. It's not going to make up for maybe missing the Big Ten and losing to Ohio State, but definitely this was one of the best seasons, if not the best season in Indiana football history.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Okay, moving on. Washington, Oregon. Speaking of another rivalry game, which all of these are today, but Oregon wins 49-21, finishes up 12-0. Really good game from them. Just kind of a blowout, not really that close at all. And, Oregon does what they need to do. On to the Big Ten championship next week against Penn State. I think they'll be favored by at least 10 points. And, this Oregon team looks good. Defensively, they held Washington to only 244 yards. They didn't have Will Rogers, but Dylan Gabriel did enough to win. Jordan James had nearly 100 yards on the ground, 2 TDs. This team is good, man, and I expect Oregon to be favored. Like I said, in the Big Ten championship game, they'll have a bye week after that, and then there'll be the playoff game in one of the big bowl game sites. I don't know which one it'll be, but they'll more than likely be the number 1 seed because they'll be 13-0. And a lot to play for here. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, this was more of like a business trip kind of deal for Oregon. They, going to Indy, take care of business, leave no doubt. So now the main goal is playing Penn State in Indianapolis. That win and, in that bye. But you could tell mission was clear, take care of business against Washington. Don't give them any chance. Don't give them hope. And they did a good job of that.
All right, moving on. Texas A&M. Really good game. I wish I could have watched this. But the Florida State game was on, so I didn't get to really focus on this. I obviously did watch the highlights, and man, Quintravian Wisner had a huge game, 186 yards on the ground. Marcel Reed did enough to keep them in this game, but it was really mistakes by Texas that kept Texas A&M in the game. Quinn Ewers had a ball deflected that turned into a pick six when they were on the verge of scoring and going up 24-0. And, that changed the game because that really made it close. Then Texas A&M has a shot inside the 5-yard line, and they have a turnover on downs and can't capitalize. So Texas gets the win. They move on to the SEC championship game, 11-1 in their first year in the SEC and getting to the SEC championship game. Texas A&M has been in the SEC for 13 seasons now and has still not been to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Texas gets in the first year and gets to the SEC championship game. So congrats to them. Quinn Ewers looked pretty good. He's still kind of gimpy with his ankle, but it's a huge game now for them. I almost guarantee that even if they lose to Georgia, they get into the playoffs. So I think they would want to win the game, because if they win the game, then they have a bye week. So then it can get Quinn Ewers healthy for the playoffs. Because if they lose, then they go play a road game more than likely, and it would be a lot tougher to try to win that. So I feel like Texas might be favored in this SEC championship game, but it's in Atlanta, so there's going to be probably more Georgia fans, but who knows? I know they try to allot pretty evenly who gets tickets to these games, so maybe there'll be a lot of Texas fans as well, considering there'll be a lot of hype for them, and their fans will want to go to something like this. It's the first time they've been to a game like this, the SEC championship game, so they would probably be intrigued to go. But yeah, Texas gets the win. What are your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and this shows how dangerous Texas can be, because Quinn Ewers definitely was not having the game we expect from him. But with how good the defense is and how good the running game can be, it's tough. You're going to need all three of those things to go wrong to really have a good shot of beating them. And that's what A&M needed to have happen. But the defense came up clutch, especially that fumble late in the game, recovering that and making sure Reed, they really did a good job containing him. And, the run game, like you said, was just, running over A&M. They were averaging, I think, 5, 6, 7 yards a carry. And again, when your running game is like that, the pick six was bad, but they didn't give up an offensive touchdown. And with the run game, they were just kind of salting the game away. Now, I will say Texas maybe could have and should have scored more, but it just shows that how dangerous they can be with when the passing game is not working. They still have the run game to lean on to, pick up yards, first downs, and get into dangerous territory, which then obviously makes it easier for Ewers on play action or pass plays, give them some more time. And the defense still looked as good as it was. Still, there's a good reason they're number one in the SEC.
Yeah. Let's move on. Last couple of games here. Kansas State, Iowa State, close game. Kansas State has a chance to make it a one-score game when it's 24-14. The field goal is blocked. They get the ball back. They get a touchdown to their tight end. It's 24-21. And then if they had the field goal, it would have been tied. But then Kansas State, Avery Johnson runs back to the end zone and throws it, but he's not. He's outside the tackle box, but he didn't throw it to the line of scrimmage. So it was a safety because it was a intentional grounding in the end zone. And so it's 26-21. Iowa State gets a field goal, 29-21. And then Kansas State has the ball, but they had a turnover on downs, and that's the game. And so it was a close game. Iowa State needed the win to get to the Big 12 championship game and some help from BYU. They get the help. They get in. So Iowa State is going to the Big 12 championship game. Congrats to Matt Campbell. I know it's been a real struggle to try to get to advance to it over the last several years where they've had good teams, and he finally gets over the hump. They have a 10-2 season. I think this is the best record number-wise for them ever, which, hey, man, that's amazing considering Iowa State has been around for 100-plus years. You know, Matt Campbell is really doing things, historically for them. And, statistically, they didn't have the best game that they've had, but they did enough to win, and they did it, and they win. So, Ian, your thoughts?
Definitely impressive because, again, they've been around for 100 years, and Iowa State gets their first 10-win season ever. So that's a big deal. And, fans rightfully, rush the field. You're going back to the Big 12 championship, first time since 2020, and a chance for them to win it. And the other side of the coin for me is I was very high on this Kansas State team. I really thought they were good enough to, make a run for the Big 12 championship. And now looking back on the season, it's man, that BYU game really was kind of the canary in the cave.
Yeah.
They lost 38-9 to BYU, but then they rattled off some wins, but they were close wins against Colorado and Kansas. But I was still thinking, they're winning. They're gutting these wins out. It looks good. But then, they drop a really bad one to Houston, then Arizona State. Yep. That Houston one really derailed the season for them. And it's disappointing because they were in the driver's seat. It's them in Colorado. Yeah. And they just cratered.
Avery Johnson and Gideon, they have a good team. And Avery Johnson had a really good command of the offense. And I was I don't know what happened. I really don't. I know, like you said, I think it really was that Houston game. I think because they they just fell apart at that one, and then it kind of just permeated through the rest of the year and I don't, maybe if they win that Houston game, maybe one of those games, this Iowa State game, they don't lose as well. Maybe they're only a 2-loss team, and maybe they have a real shot at the playoff in the Big 12 championship. And it's crazy how one game can really just stranglehold on the rest of the year.
Yeah. And it's again, just for me, it was disappointing, but it was so great win for Iowa State. They did a great job in that game, especially forcing Avery Johnson to roll out, which he's not as comfortable in. And Iowa State, they're back in the Big 12 championship. That should be a good one with them and Arizona State, Battle of the States there. Just quick, funny, I'll probably do some homework on it, but I want to know how many times have we seen teams in the history of college football that have made or have been in contention of a conference championship their first seasons, because you got Texas, Arizona State, Oregon, or right off the bat. So it's definitely goes to show how crazy this season's been.
Army, AAC.
Army, yeah, true. Yeah. I was that's SMU, the funny thing. Army, though, is one of those. SMU, yeah. Army's the one though where I was oh yeah, shoot, I forgot they weren't in the AAC. So it always felt like they belonged. So
okay, let's move on. Last two. I'm going to lean on Ian for these two because I didn't get a chance to see anything from them. I watched a little bit of the Houston BYU game, but I didn't see the highlight package. UNLV wins 38-14. A slim chance of getting to the playoff, depending on if they beat Boise State, but they win here. The go-go offense looked really good. They had 519 total yards, 351 on the ground, which is crazy good. But yeah, they win pretty significantly, never really close. Your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, and with UNLV, they knew pretty simple, again, business trip mentality. Winning you're into the Mountain West and have a chance to punch your ticket to the playoff, because they would need to beat Boise State to have a chance. And they get that rematch. And they actually, here's the interesting thing, is that in the middle of the season, they did play Boise State, and they played them tough.
Yeah,
like that was one
a
of
close
Boise
game.
State's toughest games. It was 29-24, and that was in Boise. And that, they're going to have to go back to Boise and try to do it. And I've always said, usually second time around, teams get a good look at you and have a chance. Yeah. But it is good win for UNLV. And like I said, business trip mentality. They do have some good, again, their losses. They had a close loss to Syracuse, and then they played Boise State tough. They win out. They've got a chance. They do have a chance.
Yeah, they do. And I think winner of it goes to the playoffs. So it'll be good to see. And then maybe even Army, if Army wins the AAC, they would have a chance to get in too. So anything is possible. So last game, and then we'll end rivalry week here. BYU wins 30-18. Give your rundown on this game, because I didn't get to see all of it.
Yeah, and there was a lot of drama with this one, because Houston needed to beat BYU for a lot of shenanigans that happened in the Big 12. It was such a kind of a kitchen mess getting to the conference championship. But BYU took care of business. Very good bounce back for them. They they finished with a 10-win season. But you got to think, like, these are the ones that maybe got away, because if they don't lose that game to Kansas, they're in. Yeah, they're in the Big 12 championship.
Yep.
And they lost close to Arizona State. That was a winnable game too. But it definitely a chance they had to make more noise, but it just got away with them. But they took care of business, kind of similar to UCLA. They at least ended it on a high note. And of course, there had to be a fight in this one too, because it's rivalry week, even though these guys don't have history like maybe Utah and BYU. But all in all, good win. They were able to force the 4 turnovers on Houston and just, controlled the whole game.
So that's it, everybody. That is our end of regular season. It is such a heavy lift that we have to do for 14 weeks, where we look at basically every game we can. And, with this game, we had 24 games that we looked at. I didn't get a chance to look at all of them. Ian got a chance to look at most of them. And I did I think I looked at least 12 or 13 games where I got to watch, 15-minute highlight packages of all these games, because I spent 4 or 5 hours today looking at highlights. So, we do a lot of lifting here. We look at these games, so we have a really good idea of who should be the better teams. And so I feel like we are the most thorough show out there, as best we can, considering some of the limitations we have. So, and this feels great, because now it's we have the rest of the conference games, conference championship games, the Heisman ceremony, and then the playoffs. So it gets a little easier for us, because we don't have to look at, 20 plus games. We're only looking at right now, it's 6 or 7 games next week, which is not very much. And then after that, it's only 4 games each week. So it gets a lot easier. And I feel really good, because it is a lot of work. We definitely bust our butt here at Hater Radio, and we do it for you guys. We're trying to give you our best analysis on these games and in these teams and these players. So I feel like we do a pretty good job of that. And yes, we are biased, because obviously we're wearing Florida stuff, and we both Ian goes to USF and I graduated from there, but we are definitely fans first, and we acknowledge that, and we don't want to hide from the fact that we are fans, and that we embrace that, just like we embrace the rivalry up here. We embrace that. We embrace the rivalry week as well. So that is the regular season. Enjoy these games coming up, conference championship games next week. Playoffs, which we're super excited about. Check us at haterradio.com. I'm going to have an article coming up tomorrow about the Gators. Ian, what are your socials?
Yeah, at Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, it's at G_Gator_G.
Okay, follow Ian there. Look us up for Hater Radio for all the socials: TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky now for X, Twitter, for YouTube, Facebook. Just type in Hater Radio. It comes right up. You'll look at our symbol here, over here, and then over there for Hater Radio. And it's right. It'll come right up for you. We have all of our articles on haterradio.com. Like, subscribe, comment, follow, share, all of it. Help us out. Get us in the algorithm. And, we've been doing really great subscriber-wise. This November was the best month we've ever had. We had, I believe, 460 subscribers. So we're up to nearly 1,500. We're close to getting to 2,000, which I lost Ian. All right, but that is the show. Take care, and we'll talk to you Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Take care, y'all.